Hello everyone. One tick why I sync my iPhone over as a remote control. It's really nice to be back here in Adelaide. People might not know this, but Adelaide's actually home for me. Currently live in Sydney, but home is actually Kangaroo Island. If you're from Adelaide and you've never been to Kangaroo Island, what are you doing? You're like you're the equivalent of like the person who lives in Perth and never been to Roto. Go over there. It's a beautiful place. For anyone who hasn't been, please go. KI is lovely. But yeah, it's kind of nice to be here, back in the land of Stobies and Drakes and OTR. Once again, I would very much like to thank our sponsors. DDD is a community-run event. Without these sponsors, this is not possible. I must stress that. DDD is one of the longest-running community events in Australia. And without these sponsors, completely not possible. Go speak with the vendors in the stand. Just go say hi. So this is a talk called The Future Belongs to People Who Do Things. This is the final time I give this talk. It's been a year. I'd like to say that we're in a oh fuck moment in time. Yes, there is some swearing in here. That's the only one. But the URL does have in there. Because it really started for me around about Boxing Day last year. I had an engineering director come to me and go, hey, can you play with AI over like Boxing Day? I know it's your time off, but I need all the tech leads to play with AI. I'm like, whatever. I've done GPT in the early days. I did the, you are the expert by that prompt engineering. So that, okay, apparently it's different this time. So I gave it a task to me that seemed kind of impossible. I downloaded Cursor or Windsurf, it was actually Cursor, and I said, hey, can you convert this Rust library to a Haskell library? And I said, yeah. Can you include a comprehensive test suite in the specifications of what I wanted built in this coding agent? And I wanted to create a bit of a feedback, the results of the generation. So yeah, run a build after every step. And I took my kids down to the local pool, and when I got back, I had a fully functioning audio library in Haskell. Now, this is perhaps the stupidest thing to actually produce. This is going to be a recurring theme in the talk, is play. So Haskell was a bad choice because when you're doing audio, you want to have low latency. And the reason I chose Haskell is really simple. It wasn't regurgitating like something from Stack Overflow. Somehow it's transpiled this Rust application, this Rust audio library, over to Haskell. And my jaw was really on the ground, like, whoa, what's going on here? So I authored a blog post. And in that blog post I said, this is a year ago now, just over here, end period from now, software engineers who haven't adopted or started exploring and progress towards the feeling of, oh, fuck, right, and really internalizing the changes that's happening in our industry are frankly not going to make it. Organizations are split between those who have had that realization and leaning in and playing and developing taste and those who have not. So in life, I've been quite fortunate. I've gone through exponential change. My background is in software development tools and bringing tools to market. And I started writing more. And I said, hey, wait a sec. We need better tools. We need better tools. Like anyone who's played World of Warcraft is probably familiar with the concept of multi-boxing, the idea of leveling multiple characters all at once on one or multiple computers. And these agents, all these coding agents, they take so long to generate, so I started just launching more coding agents in parallel. Meanwhile, co-workers were just doing a singular one. So in the writing I said, hey, look, what is true anymore? What is true? Like, if you think about what it has been since around about 1984, it's like the IDE hasn't evolved. It's all been designed around the human as a single pane of glass. And we're typewriters. Like, ooh, what if we designed around software assistants first, humans second? And start questioning, why does an engineer only pick one story? Why is that the default? Like, why do we only pick one Jira story? Like, I'm looking around my co-workers and everyone else is just picking one story, and I've got 2 or 3 cursor sessions running in early February, and that's becoming my default. And then I went around the engineering org and I was like, people are still thinking, like, what if I had a AI co-worker? And then my mentor, Annie Betts, who works at Anthropic, if you've seen the amount of capital deployed at these foundation labs, there's one thing for sure, where there's a large amount of capital, normally it disrupts the market and changes things. And Annie was like, no, Geoff, you're thinking wrong. You're thinking the wrong way. What if you had 1,000 AI co-workers that went ham on your backlog all at once? This is what they're thinking. For them to be able to achieve AGI or ASI, they have to automate software development. To actually get to where they want to do, they want to use ML models to actually build ML models. It gets recursive really fast. So it seems like our profession is a little bit at a crossroads, kind of like adapt, skill, update, or perish type topics. And it didn't take long for founders around about March to start sharing proclamations on social media saying, I'm no longer hiring junior or mid-level software engineers. It won't be long until AI is writing all the code for Gumroad. This is March. Then Shopify chimed in. Using AI effectively is no longer optional. We're starting to get into the dynamics now where founders and business owners are actually measuring employee performance, whether they are actually using AI effectively, and it's becoming a baseline thing for employment. It's getting really weird. This is back in March. We're now in November. Now, the strange thing is these mandates are now common in Australia, becoming increasingly common in Australia. So hi, my name's Geoff. I was previously the AI Tech Productivity Tech Lead at Canva. You might have seen some of my work. I've moved on from Canva. It's one of the engineers behind the agents.md standard. Come grab me later and I'll explain how that came to be and all the flaws with it. But rather than dwell on myself, there are some problems. Like having the agents.md here seems quite nice. It's just a text file. It's just a string in an array. That's essentially what you can look at a context window like. And let's look at a slide from a conference I was at last month. And they were putting together all these rules, all these cursor rules. Did you know that GPT-5 does not like you yelling at it? It really doesn't, but Anthropic says, please yell. Please yell at me. If it's important, use uppercase. GPT-5 says, do not use overly firm language. So what we've got is we've got this standard now where of a standard file name, people are using different model selectors and they're treating these LLMs as fungible, and each one of these vendors or the foundation labs have their own tuning guides on actually how to use LLMs. But it's fixed. So I recommend people read the tuning guides, the system model guides from the vendors, very important. And let's zoom into another slide here. You've probably heard a lot about model context protocol and MCP, etc. From aware, there is no way for at least on the client side, to basically specify that I am using GPT-5 or I'm using Anthropic. Everyone's just taking these NPM packages and installing it on the computer, and, well, one model says it must be uppercase, the other one says it must be lowercase. There's no way to content negotiation. This concept applies all the way to server. This place is really interesting, this space. So what about all your cursor rules? Think about all the rules you've created, you've checked into your Git repo. What about uppercase and lowercase? So think deeply about this. Go read the tuning guides. There are a lot of problems, even now today with AI and LLMs, where people are shooting themselves in the foot and they're not completely unaware. One thing I can give as a recommendation, as someone who professionally builds coding assistants for a living, is to use a context window for one task. Now, you've probably heard the new term context window. You can get an ML answer, but I'll just give you the software answer. It's literally an array, folks. Literally array. Every time you do a chat message, it appends to that array. And when it does a tool call to invoke bash, etc., it automatically allocates to that array. And what happens is everything that gets allocated to that array is in for consideration for an outcome. So it's really important is just to really just have your arrays or your context windows focused to one task. One task. Use a context window for creating making the website pink. Use a different context window for back-end API design. Don't do the same thing. You don't use the same chat session, same context window. So if you're using Cursor, the easiest way to get a new context window is press new chat. You're probably not pressing new chat often enough. Hit it hard, hit it often. You want to be very precise what you get into that array, and you'll get better outcomes with these tools. Now, another thing that I'd like to focus on is the size of that array, or the context window. Without getting into the inner details on how tokens are split up as stop words, I like to personally keep my context window very low, and you should too. The less that you allocate, the better the outcomes. So if you've got an array, and in that array it's just to that task, less is more. Really, less is more. So if you've got a context window of 200K, you've only really got about 176K usable, because the coding tool itself that you choose, Cursor, Windsurf, or what else have you, Claude Code, has some overhead. So the model itself has some overhead for its system prompt, and then the harness, the coding agent, has its own overhead. So you might see 200, you might be fine, but really you're actually starting out with 176-ish usable. Very crude maths. It depends on the harness and the model that you use, but the advertised number is not the real number. Now that's before you use MCP. So if you've got 176K usable, you've lost 32K even before you start your task, and you go to Reddit and you download a bunch of MCPs. What are the best MCPs that I can download? And people are like, yeah, I'm going to need the GitHub MCP. The GitHub MCP is designed for server-to-server scenarios. If you've got it installed in your organization, on your computer, uninstall it. As you can see, it uses almost 55K of tokens. So all of a sudden, your beautiful context window, 176K, well, it's 176K minus 55K, and then you add in all your other MCPs, and people wonder, why am I getting bad outcomes? It's because you're over-allocating the amount of usable memory. It's best to think of these context windows and these LLMs kind of like the old Z80. We're in the very early stages of memory management. Treat memory with scarcity. Whilst there are large context windows of 1 million, etc., really what you'll find it's really 200 times 5. Use less. Use less, you get better outcomes. I can't stress that. Less is more. These are some of my thoughts and ponderoos. I publish it on my website. As someone who builds these tools for a living, I found that there wasn't really anyone explaining how this stuff works from a software engineer. Everything was from an ML background. It's all free, it's all there. This is a collection of my thoughts from my writing. So when I published the OFUC, and then people said, what do you mean that some people are not going to make it? Engineers at Canberra are like, what do you mean, Geoff? Some people are not going to make it. So I had to explain the standard vitality curve at every company to these engineers. Every company has a vitality curve. You go for your performance review sessions and it's 6 months, 12 months. Really depends on the culture of your company. And if I've got 3 or 4 windows of cursor running back in March, and that's actually generating units of work that merge, that's key, it actually ships, and isn't that going to become the standard for high performance? If you're doing work concurrently and everyone else is not, or maybe you've got a Claude code running in the background while in a Zoom meeting, or even right now, everything's going to fundamentally change on a performance management basis. See, back in December, I was like, ugh, I was right up there. I was like grape. I was like, prove it to me. It's not good enough. It's all hype. It's all hype. It used to be me. And I could pretty much see a path, because there was some very harsh performance curves applied recently, a possibility where I wouldn't be at that company. Fortunately, an opportunity came where I went into industry and started building these tools rather than design, but I would hate for it to happen to any other person in this room. You see, there seems to be kind of like this split. There's this split of skill set that founders are now wanting and engineering organisations now want. Through my own personal journey and enumerating the engineering org of 2,000 engineers, I started realising that there's you're right up there in 2024 up on that cliff and you start playing with it, and then for some reason there's out of 2,000 engineers only 10, 12 people get it. Right? 10, 12 people really get it. They're really leaning into it. And they're getting all the attention from engineering organisations. So it's kind of like a consumption, and then you get into right in the top right-hand corner is you understand what a linked list is, or you understand what an agentic loop is, and you can build it, and you're orchestrating your function. But this is where it gets weird. There seems to be no real support to transition across between one side to the other. We've got founders making these tools mandatory. They're being forced in. This is all happening in the last 11 months at increasing speed. AI use is becoming mandatory. The weird thing that I see that happen is, I don't have it in this slide, but there's kind of a, oh fuck, do I have a job in the future stage. It's really, really scary because the identity of what it means to be a software developer is kind of being erased and redefined. Without consent, it's forced. It's really, really being forced upon us. And so I clarified. I don't think there's going to be mass layoffs of software developers due to AI. Instead, we'll see a natural attrition between those who are curious and invest in themselves. They start playing with AI, etc., and they get themselves across that chasm, they're going to be fine. But it's going to require curiosity and playing with these things. Really, it's really on you. This is a really bad time in the industry to be asleep at the wheel. Because what I see is, I've seen it myself. What happens is when you get to that state, or that fear, you've got a human choice. Do you commit and start playing with it and discover where it's great and where it's terrible? Or do you run back up the hill and say it's crap? We just need to build the bridge, folks. We need to, if you're an engineering leader, know that do your change management steps. Don't just ram it into the org. But then again, it's really on the engineers themselves. You should play with these things out of hours. This is some of the best accelerant you can have in your career right now, because so many people are sitting up there at the top left, not really playing with it. They're just saying it's all hype, or they claim like ethics issues, etc. Yeah, there's definitely some ethics issues, but like maybe the time, like there was a time if you're working in a joinery, you could use a handsaw, and then the CNC machine came around, right? There's still going to be a place for hand saws, but in business and commerce, they're going to go for the CNC machine. Learn the CNC machine, folks. So another thing is, there's another dynamic that's kind of happened in the last 11 months, is it's becoming really critical to retain people who get it. Out of like 2,000 engineers, I only found like 12 or so that really listened and started really getting with it, and playing and discovering where it is great and where it's utter crap. And when they remember it's utter crap in that thing, they try it with the next model. They try it again. They're playing. Really important to play. Well, those that don't, I remember walking into the office at Canva and around about March, and it's like, ooh, I see dead people. Not like literally that they're dead, but like kind of like I could see the exponential change happening here, and a lot of people just didn't even know what was going on. They still thought it was hype and nothing was ever changed. The industry was changing underneath them. So I caught up with a co-worker recently, and he's one of the engineers who listened. He's a data engineer, and that data engineer is on track to replace the roles of 70 people. Those people were just creating dashboards and all these things. It turns out that you can tool call your way to enumerate through a SQL schema for reporting really well. Really well. So, like, this is happening. Unfortunately, it's not really with consent. It's forced upon us, but, like, it's within your power to actually play with these tools and get better. So, one thing I've been also thinking about around about March was, like, really about the Overton window. Overton window is something that normally applies to politics. It allows you to map things and map change. And something's happened in society that causes an Overton window to slip. So that the window is the frame. The frame is the policy and popular. Things happen in the world that causes the window to slip. And I remember co-workers saying, Geoff, you're bloody mad. There's no way in hell the AI is going to be in the IDE, out of the IDE. This is back in March, April. And meanwhile, I'm already starting to see the Overton window really slip in the last 11 months. We're starting to see cursor background agents. We're starting to see Claude Code. We're starting to this focus on command line tools. Understand the reason that AI is wedged into the IDE is for a singular reason, really. It's not spooky. It's really not spooky. Developers are used to their IDE, so they're forking IDEs so they can ship tools in the IDE so they get their distribution. The ultimate primitive here is a command line tool or SDK that you can use to automate. And in the last couple of months, we're seeing Claude go in that direction. And you can wrap Claude Code into a GitHub action and all these other things. So the Overton window is already slipping. What was unthinkable and radical and people called me crazy back in April is now something considered normal now here in November, that AI is not going to be in the IDE. So things are changing at really breakneck speed. This was me way back in July. And I'm like, hey, what happens if you run these agents, a command line agent, in a loop? Like a bash loop, a wild true bash loop. And my YouTube has like tens of thousands of hours of like me running these agents in a loop. And really exploring like what are the bounds of possibilities of like what is possible. So here is, I'm not even there, I'm down at the pub drinking beer, and I'm just looking at YouTube as a remote screen, and this is broadcasting on Twitch. And that's cloning Tailscale. That's cloning HashiCorp Nomad. the PKI or infoscale, because it turns out you can actually you can take existing source code and then convert it back up into specifications. And when you convert it back up into specifications, like plain Markdown, then you can, from there, generate from it. So what we've got is this weird moment of time where we can actually Pirate Bay intellectual property and from one source code to another, ignoring software licenses. And that was me proving it. Another thing I've been thinking about is maybe what is the organisation chart of the future? I don't know. Maybe it's 2027, maybe it's 2030. One thing I do know is right now, the AI coding agents, you have a one-to-one coupling to that coding agent. You're like, no, you're stupid. That's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. If you've been using any of these coding agents, you probably notice some repeating patterns where it gets it wrong. Like it might use, like if you're using Civet, you might use version 4, but your code base uses 5. Right? Instead of you saying, no, use version 5, not 4, continually, well, maybe that's where we get the notion of hooks or some sort of primitive that auto-corrects the model behavior, and all of a sudden, we're getting into the realm of managers. So that YouTube channel, and that there was actually one of the first supervisors. It was implementing these concepts. It's just a very basic bash loop with a supervisor that spawns the process in the background, and it's just parsing the JSON. And when I see something that was going wrong, I just like terminate it, git reset hard, kick it off again, or you look at the failure domains. It's very clear that we need to go up in a level of abstraction. So I think that's where we could be, and where we could be heading as an industry, is we're still going to have software engineers, but the software engineers, we're just going to have to automate these tools. And we're starting to get these primitives become available in the industry. So, yeah, I don't know what to say here apart from I'm sorry. I ran Claude Code in a loop for 3 months and made a brand new programming language called Cursed. I'm not a compiler engineer, right? This is just literally me just on YouTube and I'm at the pub drinking beer and I'm like, give it a prompt. Make me a programming language, please, but swap all the keywords to Gen Z slang. Yeah, it did it. And that's kind of cursed in like the lexical structure and the fact that it's even possible, but really the curse thing is how cheap it was. Curse was actually 3 different programming languages. I first did it in C, then I did it in Rust, then I did it in Zig. Total cost was $15,000. So it's really $5,000 for a new programming language now. Something's weird's happening here. Yeah, in those 3 months, I generated a god-awful amount of code. I'm not even going to read it. It's too early. You get the idea. So this is one of the problems now, is like it's so easy to generate code, but how do you review it? For Cursed, I really didn't. It was like an ultimate test of faith. I just let it. You can do whatever you like, mate. If you want some types, you can do it. Just do it. But like reviewing code is now going to be one of the biggest issues in an organisation. Speaking about organisations, I think companies will soon be asking the following as like an introductory, if you're interviewing, if you're an intern or a new grad, they're going to start asking different questions when you interview. Like, what is an agent? If I was to give you that question right now, you should be able to give me a very concrete answer. If you can't give that concrete answer, go read, go build. I have a very good workshop that shows how you can clone Cursor. It's like 300 lines of code. All these vendors out here selling coding tools, it's all just magic beans and VC pixie dust. Like, it's really simple. If I was to ask you what a primary key is in a database, you should know what a primary key is. You'd be like, Geoff, what are you doing? You shit testing me? Like, no. Like, you should be able to explain what a primary key is. Well, what about what is an agent? Right? What is an agent? Show me. Build me. What happens if I pull out the whiteboard right now and I say, reverse me a linked list, or show me what a primary key is? I think this is going to become a pretty standard interviewing question, because there's a hard line being drawn between 2024 knowledge and 2025 knowledge. The AI boogeyman and what an agent is, the thing that people are really scared about, is literally a wild true loop, folks. This is AI. This is the thing that people are scared that's going to displace their jobs. This is also at the heart of Cursor or Windsurf or any of these coding tools. It's literally, on line 3, you take the user input, you create an array, user input, you send it off for inferencing, you inspect the result, and then it goes, well, the LLM wants to do an ls on the directory. So it will check, it'll do a bash tool to ls the directory, get the results of that output, send it back for more inferencing. This is AI, folks. Like, it's really simple. My point, you still need to be highly skilled as a software engineer. Like, there's no way in heck AI is going to remove software engineers, but the skill set you need now is very different, and it's changing at breakneck speed. You need to be able to explain what a primary key is, and you also need to be able to explain what an agent is from first principles. Now, something I've been thinking about is maybe LLM outcomes are mirrors of operator skill. Like, we all understand that there's musicians, and some people play a guitar really well, and really good instruments. Maybe we start thinking about LLMs as like instruments. Maybe that will change how it is. Because one of the most pressing things is, like, how do you really identify skill now if you're interviewing? You're a hiring manager, you want to figure out who you want to hire. I've been thinking about this for a very long time, went through redesign interviewing processes. This is some rough notes. Because right now, it's pretty cooked, folks. Here is a video. And in that video, it's an applicant using essentially a screen reader that then takes the results of the screen reading, sends it off for OCR. It's an overlay that's not shown in Zoom. And this person was able to use it to get automatic internships at all the FANG companies. Now, FANG company remuneration starts at like 200 to 230 US, Australian as a 23, 24-year-old. All these incentives are in place to actually cheat. So it's really, really, really weird what's going to be happening. You're probably going to come across people when you're interviewing, and you're going to be able to see that they do this. The one advice I could probably have is ask someone to close their eyes and answer the question. Like, close your eyes. They're on Zoom. Close your eyes. Answer the question. What is the linked list? Like, someone should be able to stare off in the distance and explain essentially the complexity of a problem and all the things instead of screen reading. Really, the best way to determine if someone is skilled with LLM is to watch them dance with it. Like screen sharing. Screen sharing's in again, but more specifically, look at, if someone's using an IDE and if they I remember being a lead consultant at Redify. We used to specifically give someone a really broken code base. And we would screen share and we watched them how they step debug through the code base. Did they went unit test first? Were they productive? And all the rest. How they use their tools is a huge indicator. And you can really tell, like, if you start playing with these things, like the quality of someone. If someone sees something like you're absolutely right in Claude Code and they're continually trying to correct it without creating a new array, it's like, they're not really far in their journey yet. You can develop these observations. Another potential question for a phone screen interview is like, hey, all these LLMs are not fungible. They have distinct properties where they should be used for. If you needed to do security research, which language model would you use and why? So Grok don't give no crap, right? It's perfect for security researchers. If you try to use Anthropic for security research, what happens is it goes, well, I can't do that. That's illegal. It's like, come on, I'm red team. Like, it's my job to actually do this. So Anthropic will stop you from doing it. If you want to do anything with security, Grok's the best model. If you needed to summarize a document, which LLM would you use and why? Well, it turns out Anthropic is not very good at summarizing documents. It's a little bit like a hyperactive squirrel that wants to do things. So it's not really a good LLM for like planning or summarizing, etc. So you'll never use that LLM for that one. You use something like the GPT-3o, or you might use like some of the Gemini models. And you might find something that's very good for summarizing documents is pretty useless for like tool calling. I'll get into that. So without that, if you need a task runner, the answer is simple. You need an Anthropic. So there's kind of these models, these quadrants of behavior. Something cares about social justice, something really doesn't care about social justice. I think that axis is pretty cooked and pretty useless, because essentially it's a tool of an attitude that stops you from doing things. So if you're doing security research and you're doing tradecraft and you want to use Claude Code, it's not going to allow you to do it. So you've got to switch models. It's really useless access when it comes to LLM research and implementations. What matters is the Oracle and agentic. Oracle is like a deep thinker, thinks a lot. And then you've got your agentic, which is like incrementally wrong, but incrementally right. Like it's something that's tool calling. Each one of these models have, like instruments, have different distinct behaviors. Again, the best way to figure out if someone's skilled is just really play with these LLMs and just watch them dance. Now, something I've been thinking about for a very long time is, like, when someone says AI doesn't work for them, what identity are they coming from, right? Are they coming from the identity of a software developer at ANZ Bank or some other thing? Or are they coming from the identity of, like, they're a software developer? Because, you know, I mean, like, ANZ Bank problems aren't your problems. You trade time and skill for money, right? The industry is zooming along here. If there's an adoption issue at a particular employer, that's not really your issue. It's kind of like cloud adoption. Like if you are around for that cycle, like can you imagine being a DevOps engineer with no in 2025 with no AWS or GCP knowledge? So I always like to think when someone says AI doesn't work for them, what identity do they come from? Are they playing with it at home? Are they playing and seeing where it is good and where it doesn't work or does work, or are they representing the voice of the company? Just remember, company problems, not your issue, really, as employees. But at the same time, it is a company problem because they want to do retention, etc. We'll see how this plays out. I really see how this plays out. See, there is a real beauty when it comes to AI. I've mentioned it's like playing like guitar and a musical instrument. You see, musos know everyone knows what a guitar is, and a muso doesn't just pick up a guitar, give it a strum, and then throw it on the ground and say it doesn't work. No, they play with it, folks. They play with it. So I encourage you to play with it. Because in the circles around me, the people who are getting the most out of this are deliberately playing with it. They just don't pick up the guitar and throw it on the ground. What they do is play. And now we're in the home stretch, folks. Last week I was hanging out with a mate on Zoom drinking margaritas, reminiscing about COBOL. COBOL, right? We were pretty skunk drunk at this, and we're like, can AI even do COBOL? Is COBOL even an AI thing? Is it possible? And then a couple of minutes later we open Cursor and we're like, hey, turns out it is possible. And we're just like, ooh. COBOL and LLMs is a thing. What the hell? So in the spirit of play, we did the classic. I'm not sure. It's pretty sure you're not doing it anymore, Octopus, but that used to do, one of the interviewing questions was do a reverse Polish notation calculator. So we're like, hey, let's do a reverse Polish notation calculator in COBOL. And it turns out it works. At this stage, our brains are just racing and riffing. What can it do? What can it not do? And we're like, can it write unit tests? Yeah, it can. You're like, phew. What if we made the reverse Polish notation calculator use emojis? Does COBOL support emojis? I don't know. This is the spirit of playing with AI that I would love for you to play and learn to see where it's good and not good at. Because there's one way to find out. It's just by doing. And it is possible. COBOL supports emojis. That's the world's first RPN calculator in COBOL using emojis. It does work. So it's important to do your reps. Closing ponderoos. Removing waste from your engineering org is perhaps a bigger uplift than AI itself. Like, we're ramming AI in everywhere, but like I see engineering orgs where like engineers are outputting more, but like it's the wrong thing, right? So maybe they don't have enough PMs or they don't have enough designers. Everything's got to be rethought because ideas are execution now. The old saying that ideas are nothing, execution is everything. What does it mean when I can just let up Super Whisper and go, and it creates it, right? And ideas are now execution. If you get into this, it gets really, really cool. And stories no longer start at 0%, folks. Anyone can now become a software developer. Doesn't mean it ships to production, but instead of like nerd sniping you and DMs, like I started to see sales engineers like raising pull requests, like deliberately like nerd sniping engineers. They know their stuff's not going to merge, but they knew exactly what the customer wanted, and they just raised a pull request and tagged the engineer for code review. They're bypassing Jira backlogs. Stories no longer start at 0%. And I've been thinking, what is the point of open source and open source libraries now if I can just generate it? There's some stuff that you will not generate. But for other things, you would. I have stopped consuming a lot of open source. I now have first-party software that I customize because I just craft it to what I want. Software engineers now have a job, but their job is really different. It's important that you are a product engineer, not just a Jira monkey, folks. I covered it quickly, but the identity functions, it's really scary. A lot of people say that they're 10 years Golang developer, etc. They get their identity to who they are and their sub-tribe. That's all changing. That's all changing. It's all happening at once. It's really scary. Play. Because there's a lot of things these aren't good at, and you can become an expert in understanding those things. The only way you're going to do is you play. This year has been a really bad year to be asleep at the wheel. There was a time when you could spend $200 US and you get $20,000 US in subsidized inferencing. That's gone now. That's gone now. So the people who have been playing with it we're at a cohort and generation above. But it's still not too late. Go play and do things. Folks, really important for your own personal development. Please go forward and do things. Thank you.